Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Oh, and also a bunch of European royals looking for some new digs. That's how it goes, right? Prince Harry. Next? Alright, fine. More detail. Really, we're not making light of it, but it's pretty well documented what Harry's side of the story is, and to a lot of it, we can all agree he's not wrong.
We all know what the British press can be like, and it was destroying my mental health.
To say that the relationship between Prince Harry and the British royal family is strained would be the queenly grandmother of all understatements.
As brothers, you have good days, you have bad days.
Just as a little refresher, Harry and Meghan Markle had moved into their multi-million-dollar mansion in Montecito in 2020, having decided to step away from royal life. And while he has repeatedly expressed his hope for a reconciliation, the chances of the Sussexes ever actually returning to the UK are pretty much nil.
Home for me now is for the time being, it's in the States. And it feels that way as well.
In 2022, Prince Joachim of Denmark made headlines after his mother and the then Queen, Margrethe II, did about the worst thing you can do to a royal outside of regicide.
4 members of the Danish royal family have officially been stripped of their titles, with half of the Queen's grandchildren no longer referred to as prince or princess.
Officially, Margrethe did this to allow Joachim and his children to live more normal lives, although it was likely also an attempt to slimline the Danish royals and reduce the family's expenditures. Joachim continues to serve the Danish state in a military capacity, and it was this path that brought him and his family to the United States in September 2023. As a defense attaché at the Danish embassy in Washington, D.C., the prince's job is to act as a kind of liaison between the Danish government and the U.S. military. As you can imagine, this task has likely become somewhat more difficult in recent months. In 1974, the Soviet-backed communist Derg overthrew the last Ethiopian emperor, Haile Selassie, ending a dynasty that had ruled the country for just over 700 years. Selassie's relatives survived, fleeing the communists for exile in Europe and eventually the United States. Today, the heir to the Ethiopian throne is Makonnen. The great-grandson of Emperor Selassie, Makonnen was born in exile in Rome. Unlike some royals, this guy isn't the type to flaunt his royal lineage, and for a long time he rarely discussed it at all. So when he met his future wife Ariana at a nightclub in Washington, D.C., she was in for a shock. Ariana found out about her then-boyfriend's royal lineage when a mutual friend spilled the beans. Luckily, this didn't turn out to be too much of a problem, and the two eventually married in a lavish Ethiopian Orthodox wedding. Today, both Yoel and Ariana still live and work in the United States. In 2018, they founded a media company called Old World, New World, which seeks to tell the stories of Africa and its diaspora through television and film. Makonnen still retains some financial interest in his family's home country, though. He's the co-owner of a hotel in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia's capital city. The grandnephew of Tsar Nicholas II, Andrew Romanov's parents were among the few Russian royals who survived the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. After his parents fled to Britain, Andrew was born in exile in 1923. During his long life, he never set foot in his ancestral homeland. Andrew spent a quiet insular childhood at Windsor Castle before serving in the Royal Navy and later working as a farmhand. After that, he decided to try his luck in the United States. He left Britain in 1949, settled in San Francisco, and became a naturalized citizen in 1956. As required by U.S. immigration law, he renounced his titles in the process. Not that that was a problem for Mr. Romanov. In America, Andrew basked in the countercultural world of 60s and 70s San Francisco and later moved to Marin County, where he worked as a jeweler and carpenter. His neighbors all loved him for his modesty and simple living, although some noted that he still maintained a certain poise and dignity.
What did you gain with the loss of a crown?
Independence, a life of freedom, living in the United States.
Andrew Romanov died in November 2021. He was given a Russian Orthodox funeral, but he died an American citizen, one who always kept his ancestry deep beneath the surface. Prince Dimitri is the son of Prince Alexander of Yugoslavia and Italian Princess María Pia di Savoia. Growing up surrounded by the jewelry of royalty, the prince developed a love of gemstones that eventually took him to New York, and that's where he made his residence. There, he worked at various auction houses and jewelers before launching his own business in 1999. The prince's jewelry pieces are informed by his passion for history, and he takes his materials and designs straight out of the history books. One example is the Savoy knot, historically considered a symbol of true and enduring love, which adorns many of Dimitri's pieces. Today, the prince's company produces jewelry lines that cater to everyone, from the uber-rich to the merely well-off. What can I say? He's a man of the people. The last Shah of Iran left his homeland in 1979 after the Islamic Revolution toppled the pro-American monarch in favor of Ayatollah Khomeini. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and his family became wanderers after that, eventually settling in the United States. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi never quite found a home outside of his native Iran. The United States offered him asylum in Florida with Khomeini's blessing, and the ex-Shah seemed willing to accept the offer, but he remained in Egypt and Morocco for a while, hoping that the situation in Iran would calm down after a while. But, well, spoiler alert, it didn't. In fact, it got a whole lot worse thanks to the Iranian hostage crisis, to the point where admitting Pahlavi to the US might have endangered the lives of American citizens. Nonetheless, thanks to lobbying by Carter administration heavyweights David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger, the president allowed the Shah into the States for medical treatment in late 1979. Pahlavi eventually moved on, dying in Egypt in 1980. His son, Crown Prince Reza, remains in the United States to this day and continues to work as an activist for a secular democratic Iran.
It is an ideological, radical regime that wants to export its ideology, while repressive its own people at home.
Reza hasn't rejected the possibility of retaking his father's throne should the Iranian regime fall, perhaps as a constitutional monarch, although he insists that he'd only do it if the Iranian people wanted him and his family back. For most of his life, Jérôme Bonaparte played second fiddle to his more famous brother.
Destiny has brought me this lamb chop.
Initially, though, Jérôme attempted to make his own fate, leaving France at 20 to marry wealthy 18-year-old Baltimore socialite Elizabeth Patterson. The couple seemed over the moon, and Elizabeth soon became pregnant with their son, but Napoleon wasn't having any of it. He ordered his brother to return to France and annul his marriage, even going so far as to bar Elizabeth from the French Empire. Jérôme finally relented after Napoleon threatened to take away his titles, but he quickly ran into another problem. The Pope refused to grant him an annulment. In the end, Napoleon declared the marriage null by his own authority. He made Jérôme the King of Westphalia and married him off to a German princess. But Jérôme still loved Elizabeth, who had given birth to their American son, Jérôme Napoleon Bonaparte, in 1805. So he offered Elizabeth land and titles in Westphalia, giving her the chance to be the other woman in his life. As you can probably guess, Elizabeth wasn't exactly enthralled by this offer. After a few trips to Europe following the fall of Napoleon, she returned to Baltimore for good. So this is really more about the hidden Bonapartes in America. You see, Jérôme's grandson, Jérôme Napoleon II, attended West Point and served with distinction in the French army before settling in Washington, D.C. His other grandson, Charles Joseph, meanwhile, went to Harvard and served as Teddy Roosevelt's Attorney General. And there, in the Department of Justice, established this thing called the Bureau of Investigation, something we call the FBI today. You can thank a Bonaparte for that. Emperor Augustin de Iturbide was Mexico's first monarch, reigning over a vast empire that stretched from Oregon to Panama for about 1 year. In 1823, Augustin was forced to abdicate. He was later executed by Republican forces led by Antonio López de Santa Anna. Iturbide's wife, Ana María Huarte, posed a problem for the New Mexican government as they didn't really know what to do with her. Fearing that she or her children might try to retake Iturbide's throne, she was exiled abroad to the United States. In June 1825, Ana María and her family arrived in Baltimore. Part of the condition of her exile was that the Mexican government would provide her with a pension, which initially allowed the former empress to live comfortably at her home in Philadelphia. But the rest of her life would be spent fighting to keep this pension, especially once Mexico stopped paying due to the Mexican-American War of 1846-48. As the war came to an end, Ana María sought help from President James Polk. Through an interpreter, she asked him to make Mexico pay for her pension as part of a treaty with the U.S., perhaps using the money that American troops had taken from Mexico to support their occupation. It's unclear what the result of the meeting was, but Ana María died in 1861, apparently in a poor financial state. She was buried in the cemetery of her parish, St. John's Catholic Church in Philadelphia. In case you were wondering, she had a ton of kids, like 10, and many direct descendants of the Mexican royal family still live in the U.S. today. This one still counts, even though he went back to his country. You'll see what I mean. Louis-Philippe dOrléans was a member of the House of Orleans, a cadet branch of the Bourbon dynasty. For a while, he was actually a supporter of the French Revolution, although he turned against his fellow revolutionaries after they executed his cousin, King Louis XVI. After being connected with a plot to restore the monarchy, Louis fled France and sailed to the young Republic of the United States of America. There, he engaged in an unsuccessful courtship with the Philadelphia socialites before going south with two of his brothers, first visiting Baltimore and then Washington, D.C. They then made an impromptu and unannounced stop at Mount Vernon, where they were entertained by none other than George Washington. When Louis announced he wanted to explore the natural beauty of the United States, Washington responded by tracing an itinerary in red ink on the Duke's map, which later became one of his most prized possessions. The journey took Louis and his companions from Mount Vernon through Tennessee, Pennsylvania, New York State, and finally to Boston. After 4 years in the United States, they finally decided to return to Europe, where 30 years later, the Bourbon Restoration would put that very same Louis, now called King Louis Philippe I, on the throne of France. The tale of Faustin Wirkus begins with the US occupation of Haiti between 1917 and 1930. That's really another video. You know the deal. If you want to know more about when the US invaded Haiti, leave a comment and ask for it. Anyway, Wirkus was a 17-year-old Polish-born American Marine who got shipped out to Haiti in 1917. In 1925, he seems to have saved a woman from a vicious beating at the hands of a tax collector. Apparently, this woman styled herself Queen Timamene of La Gonave. Wirkus was later stationed at Timamene's home on the Haitian island of La Gonave, where he received a royal welcome. Quote-unquote Queen Timamene declared him King Faustus Wirkus of La Gonave and made him her co-ruler. He lived in a concrete house and worked as a doctor, midwife, and apparently a king for 3 years, becoming a much-loved figure among the islanders. In 1930, Wirkus was ordered back to Port-au-Prince, bringing his 8-year quote-unquote reign to an end. The following year, he completed his service and received a discharge. According to Wirkus' own book, The White King of La Gonave, Timamene had told him to go do his duty to his superiors in his country, but to also never forget his quote-unquote children on La Gonave, and to return if he ever had a chance. She gave him a great motherly hug and he went on his way, but it seems he only ever went back briefly to shoot a documentary in 1932.